Hey guys, Mr. Devlin was here for today's lesson Tuesday, and that would be lesson 9.2. Yesterday, we were introduced to a brand new unit and a brand new concept called decimals. So if you haven't completed 9.1 yet, pause this video and make sure you watch that first because you have some work to complete for that before you jump into 9.2. So yesterday, look at the slate real quick. I'm going to try to fill up my screen with it. We were talking about fraction world and decimal world. And we said just like whole number world, fraction decimal world also has place value. So those place values, here's my decimal. And anytime we are crossing over to the right of the decimal, that would be decimal world. All right, so it would be boom, Tom stands for tenths. Herd stands for hundredths. Oh boy. And thunder stands for thousandths. Okay, now thousandths we don't need to know for fourth grade, but it will be coming in fifth grade. So I like to give it to you now so that way you have it next, so you're ready for it next year. So think of this big decimal as boom, Tom, Herd, Thunder. Okay, now it's an acronym, right? So tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Yesterday we talked about tenths. That would be the first decimal to the right, or the first place value to the right of the decimal. Today we're going to talk about hundredths. Okay, again, it has the THS at the end. And what's tricky about decimals is when you say them out loud and you're speaking, you always say the place value at the end. So if we had a decimal like this, which we saw yesterday, we would read this as 9. And what place value is it? Is the 9 in 9/10. Okay? So just like if I have a 7 here, I would read that as 7/10. Now, same thing's true if I add in a whole number. If I do 3 and, right? Because we learned that if I have a whole number, I can say and. 3 and 2/10. I would say that tenths at the very end, okay? Because that's the last place value. Hundredths is no different. If I'm going to hundredths, I'm not going to say tenths. I would just say hundredths. So we'll see some of those examples today in this lesson. All right, so grab your book and go ahead and open up your page here. Let me make sure I'm on the right page. Yep, page 501 in your Unit 9 book. All right, so let's get started. It says, in the 2008 Summer Olympics, the winning time in the men's 100-meter butterfly race, which you can see is happening right here, was only 1/100th of a second faster than the second place time. What decimal represents this fraction of a second? So over here it says circle the numbers I need to use. So I want to know what decimal represents the fraction of a second. So I only see one fraction here, so I'm going to circle 1/100th because that's letting me know that's the fraction that I'm going to be changing into a decimal. Now, I like this lesson and how they set it up because I feel like it's important to understand this. If I'm talking about 1/100th of a second, that is such a tiny difference in the amount of time that these two swimmers were racing. So 1/100th is literally if this whole thing, guys, was 1 second, which 1 second is 1 second. That's it. 1/100th of that would be that. That's how much the winner won the race by, which is mind-blowing when you think about it. All right. So again, let me repeat that. If this whole square was 1 second long and we were talking about 1/100th, the swimmer won by that much. Holy smokes. That's crazy. So they want us to write that as a decimal. So I'm going to use this place value chart, and they did it for us already, but it's important to know this. So how many holes do I have? If I'm looking at this model, And when I'm asking how many holes, I'm saying how many holes do I have shaded in? I don't have any holes shaded in. That's why there's a 0 here. Okay. Now I'm crossing over into fraction decimal world. Okay. And my first stop would be tenths. So let's look at our model. Do I have any tenths that are completely shaded? No, I don't. I don't have any longs, right, or tenths that we can say are shaded. So again, that's why we put a 0. That would bring us to our new place value, which is the hundredths. Now for our hundredth, we're going back to those teeny tiny cute little cubes that we learned way back at the beginning of the year that represented our ones in whole number world. In decimal world, the cube represents 100th. So how many 100ths do we have? 1. So to write this, we would write it as 0 holes, put my decimal point, 0 tenths, and 100th. How do I read this? Well, think about what I said earlier. I'm going to go to the first number, first of all, that's not a 0. Okay, I'm not going to say 0 and 0. You just don't say that. Okay, so I'm going to go to the first number I see that's not a 0, which is the 1. And then I would say whatever the place value is. So if I read it, it's right here. I would read that as 100th. 100th. Okay, so it's important to know that you always say whatever that last place value is in decimal world. All right, so write that down in your books. Also, we want to write it as a fraction, which would be 1 out of 100. Okay, so that swimmer did not win by much. It was a very, very close race. And I believe that swimmer was Michael Phelps, who has won many gold medals for the U.S. swim team in the Summer Olympics. And that was in 2008, which feels like it was yesterday, but holy moly, it's been 12 years. That's crazy. All right. So now it wants us to label the number line with equivalent decimals and locate the point 1 out of 100. All right. Now this is very similar to yesterday. So what we see here is let's look at this. All right, up here I have all my fractions. Okay, it goes all the way up, starting with 0 100th, goes all the way up to 100 100ths. That means if I counted all of these little ticks, there would be 100 of them. Well, we're not going to do that. Now, if I'm looking at my first fraction, what they did was they have 10 100ths, and underneath of it, they wrote that as a decimal. Let's look at 10 100ths. We know we're not going to say the 0, so we would read this as 10 hundredths. Okay, hundredths, it's because it's the last decimal place that we see. So it would be 10 hundredths. This one is 20 100ths. Again, we wouldn't say the 0. We would read it as 20 hundredths. Okay, this one isn't done for us. So they give us the fraction underneath of it. So the decimal would be 30 hundredths. So we would write that as 0 holes and 30 hundredths. Okay, and that continues all the way down the line here. So the next one would be 40 hundredths, and it would be 50 hundredths. Now, somebody asked a great question yesterday in a one-on-one meet, and they said, well, Mr. DeFilippis, if 0 is worth nothing, then do we have to write it as the whole? And the answer to the question is no. If I wanted to, I could just put the decimal and just write that, and it would still be 60 hundredths. I don't have to put a 0 here, okay, in whole number world. You don't have to do that. All right, do I have to put a 0 here? Yes, because today we're talking about hundredths. And we will read this as 60 hundredths. All right, so I'll do a few more of those to show you that we can do that. This would be 70, so read the whole number, and then hundredths. Remember, I'm saying hundredths because that's the last place value that we're hitting. So this would be 80 hundredths. Oh boy, running out of room. So that will be 90 hundredths. And then let me shrink myself here. This one, it's done for you. This would be 1 whole. Or we could say 100 hundredths, which you can see the fraction up top here. So now let's locate the 1/100th point. So this is just like the model up here with the base 10. You guys can see it's pointing right here. That would be 1 out of 100. I had to get super close to be able to see it because there's a lot of ticks here. So what names the same amount as 1/100th as a decimal? There it is. So the winning time, and now I'm going to write it without the 0 as a whole number. So the winning time was, I'll just do decimal 0, 1. And that's the same thing as this, guys, because remember, a 0 is worth nothing. Okay? You can do that for whole numbers, but make sure you put the 0 for the tenths. Don't do this if you're writing 100th. Don't do decimal 1. Because is that 100th? That would be 1/10. Okay? So later on, this is a whole different lesson. We'll be comparing hundredths to tenths. All right, what would you rather have? A tenth or a 100th? Think about that because that'll be a question later. All right. Let's go to the next page because now we're going to bring in some mixed numbers, just like we did yesterday. All right. Alicia won her 400-meter freestyle race by 4 25 hundredths of a second. How can we write this mixed number as a decimal? Okay. So the mixed number they're talking about is right here, 4 25 100ths. So she actually won by 4 whole seconds and 25 100ths of a second. So the first thing I want to do is I want to shade my model here to kind of show how much she actually won by. So since I have a whole number here, you guys will notice there's a bunch of flats. And each one of these flats, so this, would represent 1 whole second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my diagonal shade here to save some time. So that would be 1 second. That would be 2 seconds that she won by, but she won by more. All right, that would be 3 seconds. Shading that in. And then this would be my 4th and final whole second that Alicia won by. But now I want to show that fraction of how much she won. She won by 4 wholes and 25 100. Now, if I counted again, this is a review. If I counted all these little dots, or these little cubes, it would be 100. So I want to show 25. Now, could I sit here and go 1, 2, 3? Yes. Okay. But there's a quicker way. I know that if I go down one row of this would equal 10. So I can count by 10. So there's 10. And remember, I want to get to 25 because that's what my numerator says. That's 10. That's 20. Ooh. Trying to make sure I shade it in. And now I'm going to count once. So it'll be 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Excuse me. And you guys could probably shade that better than me because you're not having an electronic drawing tool here. So what I want to do now is I want to write that as a decimal. Now here, they don't have a place value chart. It says use a model and a place value chart. So I like to think my place value chart is here. And it's going to be kind of important right now because I have some holes. So over here to the side, I'm going to do my place value chart. I have my ones. That would be my whole number world. And you guys can write this down too. All right. There would be my tenths. Oh, and don't forget our decimal, Mr. D. Philippus, right here. And then our hundredths. All right. So how many ones? Not once. There's no such thing as a oneth. How many 1 wholes do we have? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 1/2. And then how many tenths are left over? Well, I did the 1 here. Okay, look at my drawing tool. And then here's my second one. So I did 2 tenths. And how many hundredths extra did I write? It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so to write that as a decimal, it would look like this. 4 as my wholes. I had 2 tenths and then 5 1/100ths. So how would I read that? Remember, the decimal point, when I have a whole number, I'm going to read that decimal point as and. So I would read it as 4 and then read the whole number. That's the thing. Yesterday, we only saw tenths, so read the whole number. So it would be 4 and 25, and then read the last place value for the decimal. So 4 and 25 hundredths, because the last digit, the 5, we could see it right here, is in the hundredths. So 4 and 25 hundredths. And you can see they wrote that right here. We would read it as 4 and 25 hundredths. Okay? All right, let's go. I'm looking down here. Oh, there's a place value chart. So they had one here. I didn't even realize. So you could fill that in now. All right. So that would be 4 and 25 hundredths. So 4 wholes. That would have been way easier than me trying to make my own. Okay. And then it would be the same thing. So we'd write it as 4 and 25 hundredths. All right. So that's it for today, guys. What I'm going to ask you to do for your flip grid today, it is the same flip grid from yesterday. You're just going to do some different problems. So the problems that I would like you to do today are numbers 2, 3, and 4. And that would be on page 503. So you're going to do number 2, number 3, and number 4. And if you look at the directions, it says write the fraction or the mixed number. That's what the first line is for, this guy right here. And then write the decimal. That would be this line. Okay, so 2, 3, and 4. All right, good luck. Can't wait to see your work. Miss all of you guys very much.